and welcome to this week's rant. Actually, this is being pre-recorded, so it's not Sunday. But it is the rant anyway. But before we get going, the normal parish notices. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, you want to subscribe to the channel, hit that subscribe button. If you want to be notified when I publish new content to the channel, be it videos about legacy tech or anything else, hit that bell icon. Consider supporting the channel using Patreon. That's www.patreon.com/themusictechguy. The address will appear somewhere down there. All funds go to running the channel and producing these videos that you're watching. Right, so back to the normal ranty type stuff. So this rant is going to cover a couple of subjects because not quite one subject covered about 10 minutes. So the first subject I'm going to cover is something I've called postage in a lockdown era. And the reason why I've called it that is because a couple of weeks ago I made or I said to camera, I can't remember if it was a mailbag or it was an SMR or it was something else, that I said the UK Postal Service is running brilliantly. And I have to be honest and say the UK Postal Service is running brilliantly. And I have to take my hat off to the Royal Mail and the other couriers that seem to be sort of turning up at my house, which predominantly seems to be DHL and Hermes at the moment. But I'm ordering stuff online and that stuff is turning up relatively quickly. In fact, I actually had this week something I ordered from China, which they gave me a delivery date of May. And I only ordered it around about the beginning of April. And it actually turned up today. No, it didn't. It turned up yesterday, sorry. But the days sort of roll into each other when we're all locked down. So, there is days of the week, today, tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, etc., etc. Get the drift. But for me and the other housemates, it seems to be being delivered very, very quickly within the UK. And apart from this China one, which actually arrived quicker than I thought it was going to arrive, because I thought it would probably go via sea post rather than air freight. Everything else I've ordered is in the UK coming really quickly. However, the international stuff, especially stuff coming from the US at the moment, seems to be interesting. In a recent mailbag, I also said something along the lines of, if you use eBay, the eBay postage scheme, it seems to go via out of Mongolia before it gets to its eventual destination. Well, here are a couple of traces I've got of packages I've ordered from the US and how those packages have gone all over the shop in the US before they sort of eventually arrive here. So the first package was something I purchased on the 8th of April. And the vendor on the other side turned around and created the postage pickup receipt on the 9th, the day after. So he was immediately on the case, so good stuff for him. Then the package was picked up and arrived at the UPS centre in Utah on the 9th. So the day after I ordered it, it was already at a UPS facility in Utah. Then it moved on the 10th to a facility in West Valley City, Utah. And then on the 10th again, it then moved to Reno, Nevada. And then on the 10th again, it also then moved to San Francisco, California. It then moved to the International Distribution Center in San Francisco on the 11th. Then it was checked in and out 4 times or marked as departed in San Francisco before eventually being marked as departed on the 15th of April. And then its next listing, it's arrived in Tokyo. So it's gone the wrong way. Well, I consider it the wrong way around the world. Maybe it's the right way around the world because of it being West Coast US. But it's sort of kind of gone from sort of mid-West US to the West Coast of US. Now it's gone to Tokyo. And that was on the 17th. And because obviously you are gaining hours because Tokyo is that far ahead of us. So it left Tokyo at 12:36 on the 17th and arrived in London at 4 p.m. some four and change on the 17th as well. And of course, now I'm waiting for some customs paperwork to turn up, because obviously anything that comes in from overseas hits the UK customs service, and if it's over a certain value, which is about 30 quid, they want their chunk of change out of you as well. And also, you get clobbered with an 8 quid in the UK anyway. You get clobbered with an £8 handling fee for them doing a little bit of paperwork, which I've always thought was a bit naughty, but that's kind of what I factored into the cost of buying this anyway. So that's gone sort of dump over the US, and then it's gone the wrong way around the world. Better than the eBay one, because eBay goes everywhere. It's like the Harry Potter night bus. And then package 2, purchased on the 31st of the 3rd. And this is coming by United States Parcel Service, so it's USPS. Get the acronyms right. So that started in Berkeley, California, the day I bought it, which was the 31st. It then went to Oakland, California on the 31st. It then arrives at San Francisco on the 1st of April. It then states it's going through the processing facility on the 1st of April, and then it left San Francisco on the 2nd of April, and it's not been heard of since. So I have absolutely no idea where that package has got to. It is probably floating around the world somewhere. So today I sat down and wrote to the vendor and said, do you know where your package is? Because it hasn't arrived yet. And normally when packages arrive here in SSA, there's a de minimis limit, and if it's over the de minimis limit, customs and excise in the UK, which is sort of our border tax, they normally send you a little sweet letter saying, please pay us some money. And I haven't received that either. So, somewhere down the line, I suspect at some point I will get another reminder saying, please, can you give us some money? But, it's sort of, normally what would happen with these things, if we weren't in this sort of scenario where we are at the moment, that probably would have come out of one of the main hubs in the US. So it probably would have come out of Las Vegas airport rather than go all the way to San Francisco. But it just shows you how the lockdown of transit. I say transit. What am I saying? The aeroplanes, for argument's sake, because a lot of this sort of small package stuff is air freighted. They basically stick it on commercial airliners. Now most of the commercial airlines aren't running, so probably explains why it's going all over the shop before it gets here, but it is still running, so that's the important thing. So the next thing is probably something that sounds a bit daft, but it's probably something that I kind of needed to buy. And it's a simple solution to a problem. And one of the problems is when you're a videographer, which I wouldn't claim to be a videographer, but I am making videos for this channel, so I suppose I am a videographer. And also, I'm starting to use multi-camera setups. So when I've just been using a single camera setup, I've kind of been able to manage the video production. In terms of stopping and starting the videos and knowing how the sequence of events needs to flow in. So quite often when you're doing a how-to video, quite often I'll film the keyboard and what's going on the keyboard, and then I'll film what's going on a computer, and then I'll film the cables being plugged in and out, and then you've got to then sequence that all together. And I'm normally quite good at being able to work that out, because obviously it's me that's doing the film and it's me that's doing written the sort of rough outline of the script, so I know which bits are happening at which point, so I can sequence them together. But when you start using multi-camera setups, what I found is it becomes much harder to try and sequence the bits together. And one of the easiest ways to do this was actually suggested by a friend of mine, who turned around to me and said, "Why don't you use a clapperboard?" why do I need a clapperboard? But as he said, the reason why they used it in Hollywood is not because it makes it, that it gives somebody something to do. It's so that they know which scenes are being filmed, because those scenes may be filmed in a random order. So obviously, when your director and your production team do their run schedule for filming, they can be filming scenes from this episode and that episode and that episode if it's TV or some sort of show. They can be filming scenes from, if it's a film, they can be filming scenes from Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. And then at some point in the editing process, they splice it all together and you get the finished article. I hadn't thought about that. But what clapperboards do is do two things or what I'm going to use it for is do two things. Number one is it gives me a visual representation of what I'm filming. So there you go. There's the clapperboard for this segment of the SMR. So this is scene 3. Hasn't got a date on it because I forgot to put the date on it this morning when I started this. But that's the clapperboard. The second point the clapperboard does, and again, this is sort of around about the audio cueing, is it gives me a visible signal on both recording mediums. So both cameras record audio, and it gives me an audio cue on both cameras of when that thing went click, which means that if I sync the audio cues on both cameras up, then theoretically the video I'm shooting on both cameras is the same video. Good day. Yeah, very simple solution. So that's my first Patreon purchase really for the channel, is a better way to use multi-camera setups. So thank you those people who sponsor me on Patreon, because that's the first thing, and it was a simple thing, a really simple thing, but it really is going to increase or enhance the way I process videos going forward. So the next thing, and this is probably the most exciting thing that's arrived, is this has now arrived, which is the Juno 60 Boutique, otherwise known as the JU-06A, and it hasn't been out of the box yet, and I'm not going to open it quite yet. I will be opening it shortly. So for those who don't know what this actually is, this is the boutique version of the legendary Juno 60 synthesizer. And the reason why I have bought it is not because I want a Juno, well, I do want a Juno 60, but that's a different kettle of fish. But it's for the fact that they have incorporated the arpeggiation engine of the Juno 60 into this particular unit. And it was used for many, many of the legendary songs of the sort of 80s and 90s. And because the music I write is kind of akin to that sort of area, I wanted that arpeggiation. I can get arpeggiations with lots of the other pieces of equipment I've got, but really it's easier to start with the arpeggiation of the actual instrument you wanted and then modify it from there, rather than try to recreate the instrument arpeggiation and then try to modify it, if that makes any sense. But it had arrived. There will be some videos coming up in the coming weeks about this, so there'll be the stock videos of how the hell do I make this thing work, and then there'll be some videos about me actually using this, so that will be pretty cool. So I'll pop that down there for a sec. And finally, so as you probably know if you've watched the channel on a regular basis, I have been creating various disc and sound libraries for the instruments that I own. And one of the things I've had sort of some problems with recently is the supply of discs. And I think the problem really is that, we don't really have 3.5-inch disc drives anymore, and therefore I'm not sure how many manufacturers are still manufacturing discs. And it's really important that somebody carries on manufacturing discs, even if it's short volumes. And the reason I say that is there's a lot of legacy equipment out there that still requires information to be uploaded to it. from some sort of disk unit. And I work in an industry that has long lifetime assets. And I'm not going to tell you what they are, but we have long lifetime assets. And one of our biggest struggles is that the IT world moves on at a pace. But our assets, we don't expect to replace our assets for 20, 25, and in some cases 50 years because of the type of asset they are. So, if we put some control units in for something, and that had a 3.5-inch disk drive that had some weird and funky 1.6 megabyte format on it, we still need to be able to get 3.5-inch disk drives to be able to load stuff onto that unit, and we also have to be able to write 3.5-inch disks from the systems that actually set things up. So, it's not just us home music makers who run Atari STs and Amigas and keyboards and various other instruments. So many of the sequencers, many keyboards, all had 3.5-inch disk drives. Now, there's probably people that are shouting at me now going, what about just dumping it via SysX? You don't need disk drives. And the answer is you don't need disk drives. However, and I've maintained this for a long, long period of time, if you're working with a synthesizer, you have to, if you want to use SysX, you have to set the SysX up. So you have to create the environment, set the SysX up, make sure you got the right cables connected to the right things. If you're using it through some sort of studio computer interface, you've got to make sure that that interface is either set up so it allows SysX to pass directly to the instrument you want it to pass to, or you then have to set up a different MIDI interface to allow the computer to transmit only to the instrument. Now, I'm one of these people who have, I probably in the past have used the computers to dump SysX directly through a sort of generic interface. However, what I found is I get a rejection and failure rate doing that. Whereas if I have the computer plugged directly into a MIDI interface and the instrument and the computer are either end of that interface, I get a much better acceptance rate when I'm trying to dump SysX backwards and forwards. So that's my personal experience. That is a faff, okay? That is a real pain. And if you just want to sort of do things like boot the synthesizer up, put the operating system in, do this, do that, then what you need is a disk. And that's where the whole concept of the library came from. And it's also around the ability to actually load things backwards and forwards very quickly. So if you've got stock sounds, it's easier to just stick them on a disk, and then next time you need them, put the disk in and hit load. 60 seconds later, you have the sound on the machine. If you've got to do SysX, every time you need to do a SysX, you've got to set the environment up so you could dump sounds backwards and forwards. And that's a minimum, well, for me, it would be about 20 minutes every time I wanted to do that, because I was going to hunt for the interface, which wouldn't be hidden. It would just, and then you've got to disconnect and reconnect, and you get the idea. So anyway, I've had problems with disks. But this week, well, it wasn't this week, it was a couple of weeks ago. I managed to get hold of a fairly significant supply of 3.5-inch double-sided, double-density discs, which I will be using for people who purchase media replacement from me. So if somebody comes to me and says they want to buy, they need a T1 OS disc, I've got high-density, double-sided discs, and I've got these ones which are double-sided, double-density discs. So these are for things like, for arguments like this SY85 that's sitting on the counter here, the Ensoniq EPS16 is double-density, double-sided. The Roland 330 S330 is double-density, double-sided. So there's a lot of instruments out there that still use this format, and if you're using an Atari or you're using an Amiga, guess what? It's that format as well. So they have arrived, which is good, because it now means that I am in a position to actually offer that sort of media available to people if they want media replacement. I've probably got it. And that means this is the end of the SMR for this week. So, live long and prosper.